master chef. Live life.
Hey, how y'all doing? This is Mongo Slade. So today I want to talk about speech, and basically I want to talk about free speech as it exists in the United States. I'm not going to go bury you in fucking nonsense like law and all that shit. I just want to put it like this: free speech in the United States works two ways. It is a cultural institution and it is a legal institution. The legal institution means that the government cannot force you to say anything you don't want to say and cannot prevent you from saying whatever you want to say. So, but there are ways around it. And the cultural institution, as far as free speech, is definitely in danger in the U.S. There's basically through these institutions. Some of them are private, some of them are publicly funded, which means that they're government. If it's funded by the government, it's government. And we need to basically accept that definition of government. That if you accept money from the government, you're funded by the government. You are government, and then, therefore you should be able to play. You should be forced to play by the same rules the government should be forced to play by. And I'm going to talk about this in terms of what's been going on with WWE and the third party announced situations. And something else I caught, which was ESPN talking about the NBA and the players not wanting to support COVID vaccines. Now you may say that what the hell does this stuff have to do with anything? And I say like this stuff is all about speech. You know, see the WWE, they have partnerships and sponsorships with all these different organizations. What they don't want is wrestlers either trying to monetize competing services and different things like that. So they don't want, wrestler out here trying to support some charity that is the opposite of the charities or that takes money away from the charities that they support. They don't want to take money out of their own pockets. They don't want to take money out of the pockets of their partners and different things like that. And of course, there's ways around it. You can obviously do whatever you want in terms of whether you want to support a charity or not. I think they pretty much cleared that up. That Sami Zayn can continue doing his Sami for Syria thing, so that's not in the way. But you have to think about it as well as like there was a lot of problems that came out of this whole people supporting charities online thing. For instance, the whole Black Lives Matter stuff, where you had a lot of the wrestlers, Mia Yim, and was one of them, was passing around like the Minnesota Freedom Fund and was basically stomping for or campaigning for them on her Twitter page. Now, under this rule, I'm pretty sure she can still do it because I don't think she was getting paid to do it, which I guess is the kicker is whether you're going to get paid to do this. So they're not quite squashing her freedom of speech, but a lot of people seem to think so. That a lot of this WWE wanted to control their Twitter accounts and Twitch accounts and all this type of stuff is stifling their freedom of speech. And what we don't understand is, yes, in these situations, it does. Like when you work at a place, they do give you a list of things that you can't say. Or they'll hit you with things like sexual harassment. You might not have a hate speech law. We don't have hate speech laws in the United States, but please believe if you drop the N-bomb at work, you might get fired. Because there'll be speech codes in the workplace and that sorts of things. Like you may have certain people you can't cross. Certain lines you can't cross. And that's all WWE is doing is creating these lines, these barriers, so that everybody knows this is what these things that you can't do, these things you can do. But I think more than that, the worst thing, not being able to say whatever you want is pretty bad. Being forced to say things that you don't want is even worse. It takes a higher level of coercion to force you to say things you either don't believe or don't want to say. And I don't think we've gotten to that point with WWE yet, where they're forcing people to say things they don't want to say. Even though I'm pretty sure they may ask people to say things and it's not entirely true or something like that, but something people don't really believe. But as far as this compelled speech, it's not happening yet. But I think the NBA is getting towards it. So it came out maybe on February the 17th or the 18th, that the NBA was having a hard time getting players to promote the COVID vaccine, and it was all over the internet that NBA players were, a lot of the top level NBA players were not trying to support this COVID vaccine. They didn't know enough about it. They didn't want to be spokesmen for this type of stuff. They don't understand it. They don't want to be bothered with it. And it's become like this big deal, right? Because the NBA is moving slowly but surely towards compelled speech. And when you look at these organizations, the NBA is just being one of them. Like universities now, there are compelled speech laws, where you have to take an oath to diversity and inclusion and equity, right? In order to get a job, in order to move up. They're going to start doing that stuff in regular society, right? Like in the NBA, imagine being the one NBA player who doesn't want to kneel during the game. And since we understand in the United States that kneeling, while it's not verbal, it is speech, right? So you're basically only going to compel people to speak, by compelling them through social pressure to do all the Black Lives Matter stuff, to do all of that shit. But they're not allowed to say anything about, the NBA and the work they do in China. And all the stuff about the Uyghurs and all these type of stuff they got going on in China. You're not allowed to talk about that because that damages business relationships. So they're not allowed to talk about that. But they are allowed to talk crap about the United States, right? Because it plays into the brand. There are some things that are good. There are some activism that's good for the brand. And then there's activism that's not good for the brand. And, these organizations are slowly but surely going into these pockets where, if you can, like, in the universities, it's perfectly acceptable for you to say things like some white people are going to die for Black liberation. It's perfectly fine. You'll never get fired for that because some type of activism is okay. It's good for the brand. Then you have other kinds of activism that are not so good for the brand. Like trying to say, hey, maybe women don't want to go into being engineers. Maybe they like being nurses. Maybe they don't want to be doctors. Or maybe, we shouldn't have trans women playing in sports with men. That could be looked at as feminist activism. Not allowed to do that at all. You'll get fired. So we're definitely teetering here with things with compelled speech laws. The pronouns definitely compelled speech. You have to refer to somebody as their preferred pronouns. That's compelled speech. That is telling somebody you have to say this, right? Or face the consequences. You have to say this. That's a compelled speech rule. And like I said, it's far greater to coerce people to say things. It is far worse than saying you can't say that. I can work with not saying something. You don't want me talking about a trans person. You don't want me to talk to them or whatever. I can work with that. But saying that I have to say this, I must say this. Well, I'm just a puppet then, right? You must just put your hand up my ass and move my mouth for me. And that's really the world that we live in now. Slowly but surely we're getting there. We're getting there when it comes to the compelled speech. But it's an interesting thing to look at because I remember when this third party thing first dropped, the WWE third party thing. Some people were smart and they remembered the Brock Lesnar UFC situation where he had just won a fight and he started talking about he's going to go drink Coors Light, which was a slap in the face to Bud Light, who was the sponsor of UFC. So then I guess Dana White must have grabbed him by the back of his head, had a conversation with him, like, look, we get a lot of money from these people. You might want to tighten that up or we're going to fire you. And then he was like, oh, well, yeah, I love Bud Light. all of a sudden? All of a sudden, he loves Bud Light now. You know, he could have just went quiet on the subject. You know, but of course the media was like, "Oh, are you still drinking Coors Light, Brock, or whatever?" Right? But you know, that's the stuff that you have to protect your brand over, because Brock is an independent contractor. He's not gonna. Well, even when he was in the UFC, he was also a little bit younger at the time. You know, more likely to buck the system. Wanted to go out there and act a fool. He wasn't getting paid by Bud Light, but they were paying the UFC, so he was like, "Shit, they ain't paying me, so I'm going to say yada yada yada," not knowing that, you know, shit rolls downhill and that he can't get paid if Bud Light not paying the UFC. So, you know, so that's really what the third party things is all about. You know, they partner with these WWE partners with these organizations, and they're not, as far as I know, they're not compelled speech when they do these commercials. They're not forcing people who don't want to say things they don't want to say. You know, they just ask people to participate, and if they do, they do. If they don't, they don't. I remember there was a big deal about tribute to the troops. They thought that people was being forced to do tribute to, of course, the people on the internet. They thought wrestlers were being forced to do tribute to the troops and didn't want to. Rob Van Dam said he didn't want to do tribute to the troops. I forgot the reason why he didn't want to do it. I think he just said he would rather have had that day off. And he said nobody said anything to him. Nobody did anything to him. The internet did this again with the Saudi Arabia stuff, right? That certain people didn't want to go to Saudi Arabia, like Daniel Bryan, and that they were going to punish him for not wanting to go to Saudi Arabia. That was that same week I read that story. Daniel Bryan won the WWE Championship. That same week. Goes to show that the internet doesn't know what the fuck you're talking about. So WWE, as far as I know, doesn't have compelled speech, but we're getting a lot of tamping on the free speech. You know, can't say this, can't say that. You know, can't use this site, can't use that site unless we're going to get paid from it, which is a business deal. You know, they just want to make sure they get a cut of everything that these guys are doing that monetizes their likenesses or whatever. But the NBA, which is unionized, believe it or not, completely different. You know, completely different. You know, like, it is almost like when LeBron James came out and basically was defending China, I was like, yeah, there's something weird going on with that. And you don't see this with football players. Like, you don't really see football players going out, and well, there's some compelled speech there with the whole kneeling shit, like the whole Black Lives Matter worship. There's a lot of compelled speech in that, because a lot of these players, if they buck the system and say they don't really believe it, they don't want to fuck with it, they don't want to do it, they'll get destroyed. Especially if they're white, you know, they'll just get ripped apart in the media, you know, and their lives will be made like a living hell. That's why I said, like, once that kneeling shit started, it created the demand that you have to show solidarity, right? Demanding in solidarity. Everybody's got to do it now. And now it's become a thing where it's expected, you know? So what if you don't want to do it? Are you going to be the guy that's going to not kneel? You're going to be the guy that's going to stand in the back and perhaps get singled out, and people say, look, you don't believe Black Lives Matter? You know, you certainly can't be the coach of the team and don't believe Black Lives Matter. You certainly can't be the general manager. You certainly can't be white in that locker room and don't believe Black Lives Matter. And what they'll do is they'll talk about leadership. They'll talk about being a part of the community. All these big, both of those things should be in quotations, quote unquote, part of the community, quote unquote, showing leadership. Because when I read the article about the NBA players not wanting to do the COVID vaccine commercials, that was the big thing. Well, the black community is disproportionately yada, yada, yada from COVID. You know, we know that black people have a twisted history when it comes to the government and trust in medicines and stuff like that, but we really need to get you guys on board. And I'm just saying, like, this is part guilt trip. You're going to be saving lives, also playing into their egos. You're a leader of the community. The kids are going to be looking to you. We want to take pictures of you getting the vaccine and posting it online. It's like, But then what happens when some people start doing it, right? What happens when the league mandates it? And then that's different. That's different. And I think that we're going to be dealing with that very soon in the United States, because we're a very individualistic society. Even though there's some shit that's going on that I don't like, there is still a lot of individualism in the United States. Once these jobs start saying you must get the vaccine, we're going to start looking at some weirdness here. Now, there's people who are like first responders, people in the medical field. Those people, they already been doing with this. They got to get vaccinated. But there's going to be people who are not really that, like that. Like they are not firefighters, police officers, doctors, nurses, or whatever. Like if you're a doctor or a nurse, and you don't want to get vaccinated, that's suspicious, as far as I'm concerned. But what happens when you're like a wrestler or an NFL player or an NBA player, and you don't trust the vaccine and you're not going to get it, and you're like, nope, you're not putting it in me. And then the league says, well, you can't play if you're not vaccinated. And WWE or somebody says, well, if you're not going to get vaccinated, you're not going to play. You can't wrestle. You can't work unless you get vaccinated. That's a completely different argument, because that's compelling. That's coercion, right? To me, that's pretty fucked up, But I guess we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Somebody's gonna have to be, that's like WWE can't force you to get surgery. I don't think they can. I don't think they can force people to get surgeries. I don't think they can force people to take medications. I think that this whole thing, because you can't force somebody with, bipolar disorder to take medicine. You also can't force them to go to a therapist or a psychiatrist. They have to want to do it. But with something like this, because everybody's been lying about how it spreads for so long, they're going to say, well, we want everybody to get vaccinated. And then what happens when somebody says no? Like we already, and that's why I really wanted to bring up the NBA and the WWE, because they're looking at it from two different perspectives. They haven't asked the wrestlers to start doing the vaccinations yet, but they're going to do it. They're going to start asking these guys, oh, we're going to give you guys the vaccine, and we want to take the pictures of you guys with the vaccine and the needle in your arm, telling everybody that it's safe. But that's kind of crazy, isn't it? That the media knows that they can't tell you or me, and tell me that it's safe, straight face. They have to go to people that we trust. Oh, I'm going to get the vaccine, not because a doctor told me to, but because LeBron James told me to. How crazy is that? That they think that. They have no legitimacy. That they can't go on TV and make the argument and convince people to go get the vaccine. What they have to do is they have to go to LeBron James and James Harden and whoever else plays basketball, because I don't know any of the motherfuckers. They have to go to them and say, convince all these Negroes to get the vaccine, please. We're going to go to washed up rappers like DMC. And we're going to get them to get people to take the vaccine, because we have no legitimacy. Nobody trusts us. That's insane. That's insane. And that's more than compelled speech, because now you're talking about putting substances in your body. I want to see who's going to be the one that's going to stand up and say, not me. And it's probably going to be some small-time player or some small-time wrestler with nothing to lose. If I was Roman, I wouldn't do it. He got leukemia. You're not about to... The vaccine is going to be made of a certain strand of COVID. It has to be. All vaccines are made of sort of dead or, weakened versions of the actual virus that they're supposed to be fighting off. You have to expose your body to it so it can fight it off. So if you are high risk, and they've been telling you for months and months and months to stay away, now they're saying, oh, here, let me come put some of this shit right in you. That's insane. But that's the only way, because that's how vaccines work. And then they won't tell anybody about the. And that's really my thing, is they won't tell anybody about the side effects. You're not allowed to talk about side effects. Like when they start talking about people's faces going full mudslide, going full good up, by God, Jim Ross, half their face becoming paralyzed, they were like, well, it didn't happen to that many people. It's like, what the fuck? I think that people should know whether it's happening at all. Let people make the decision for themselves, but they have no legitimacy. So what they're going to do is they're going to go find some extremely healthy 6'5", 230-pound basketball player. Well, the shit wouldn't kill him if he caught it full blown, and give it and shoot it into his fucking arms. And then he's going to give up like the peace symbol or be like, I'm vaccinated, bro. You should get vaccinated too. And then you take your obese 280-pound ass up there to Walgreens to get shot up and your face fall apart. You know, like that's not how the world works, bro. It's not. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I'm just saying, you know, what's good for the goose is not necessarily good for the gander. And anybody who is telling you that we can just inject the same shit into everybody and it's going to react the same way is lying. You know, it's bullshit. That's not how it works. My body is different from Shaq's body. My body is different from, Roman Reigns' body. I might be able to get the vaccine and be fine. But it's the same for my brother. I have to think about that. And I'm glad that the NBA players are thinking about that. But I'm thinking we're getting to the point where they're probably going to end up forcing the issue. You know, either through media pressure or maybe some incentive programs where they're going to start paying these guys. And it's going to end up trickling down to other sports. Because it's not just going to be the NBA is targeted because it's high among the black community. But I'm pretty sure, it's going to, for anybody who is of other, like Hispanics and stuff like that, they're probably doing lucha stars and soccer players or whatever the hell are going to be doing commercials soon. And you have to act, and that's why I did this video. It's because I think you're going to have to pay attention. Like, are they doing this because they want to, or because they feel like they have to in order to keep their jobs? That's why I wanted to talk about this. Compelled speech and free speech. Can you just plain say no and walk away? Or do you have to do this? Do you have to put your body on the line? Do you have to get injected with something you might not want to get injected with? Just so they can do a PSA. If I was personally, that's a tough question. That's a tough question. But I don't know. If you don't live in the United States and you start seeing the vaccines roll out, what have you been seeing? More people who watch TV than me. I don't watch TV. But I did notice because my brother was watching ESPN and, Max Kellerman and Stephen A. Smith was talking about it. So I decided to look it up. And yeah, it's real. The NBA is really sluggish on this whole vaccine thing. And it makes sense. And I'm wondering, like, eventually it's going to get over to WWE. Eventually. Because it always does. But they're looking at targeting demographics right now. They're going to, and the point of it is to instill hope and instill goodwill and, but when you don't have any legitimacy, you don't have no authority and people don't trust you, you have to subvert that by utilizing people that they do trust. And I should say, like, to be quite honest, if you are going to be a paid advertiser for something like a vaccine that kills somebody, you should be able to get sued for it. Straight up. Especially if somebody's like, I'm going to get the vaccine because my favorite basketball player did it. And then you are the reason that person got the vaccine and they die. Maybe, you know what? Maybe I shouldn't sue you. But if it were to happen, let's say, you should get a letter, an email, and you should be forced to read it in public. That you doing this commercial and this person died or they got Bell's palsy or they had a stroke or whatever because you told them it was safe. That should be, it's completely different from beer. right? This is not beer. It's not potato chips. It's not sandwiches, right? It's not like, you do a commercial for a Subway sandwich and then somebody goes and gets a Subway sandwich and they get salmonella and die. Or that's not what I mean. This is something that's inherently dangerous. You know, this is something that's inherently dangerous. You're being told medical advice. That's medical advice you're giving out. That the vaccines are safe and that yada, yada, yada. That's medical advice. That's completely different from you shilling beer and potato chips and peanuts or anything else. So, and to be quite honest, I think they should be banning athletes. I mean, if I was going to say this, if I ran the NBA, I would say my players are not going to participate in that at all. Okay? Nothing that has to do with medicine. We're not going to be trying to pimp any pills. We're not pimping any vaccines. We're not doing shit that got anything to do with medicine. For this reason. The last thing I want to do is be like LeBron James is like my son or something like that was told by LeBron James that the vaccines were safe, so he wanted to go and take it, and then something bad happened. And then, of course, Big Pharma, you can't sue them. So you're fucked. You can't sue LeBron, can't sue the NBA, can't sue the doctors, can't sue the pharmaceutical companies. So, what the fuck are you going to do? What are you going to do? Right? Just live with the fuck up. And they say, oh, you're one of those anomalies where something went wrong. Sorry to see. But hey, look, everybody else so happy. Or your face was slid for 2 weeks. You had a stroke or something. Whoops. Our bad. Here's some money. Like, man, but this is a tough subject. It's a tough subject, and I spent more time on the vaccines than I wanted to. But I thought this was an interesting subject to discuss because a lot of people talk about WWE and how if they had a union they wouldn't have all these problems. They don't understand the NBA does have a union and they have more of these problems. They still get their marching orders and they're not independent contractors, they're fucking employees. Right? So they're fucked. They're not only they're probably more rules on NBA players than there are on WWE superstars. As far as their behavior, personalities, ethics and all that type of shit, that shit probably the thickest book in the world. The NBA was telling them what kind of haircuts they could have. Yeah, they were. I remember they was all over Allen Iverson for having braids. This was what, 2011? No, not 2011, 2001? Now, they probably wouldn't be able to get away with that today. They'd probably get called racist. Well, because braids are cultural or some shit. They'd probably made up something. But the NBA used to be the Wild West. Now it's very, very fucking corporate. And, people started getting in line. So, it is what it is. But let me know what you guys thinking about this subject. About the whole compelled speech, the whole free speech thing, man. It's under danger in the United States because of companies taking edicts from the government and basically doing the government's bidding. The government says, "Oh, we want to push vaccines. We want to fire people for not being progressive and not using proper pronouns and all that bullshit. So now you guys have to do it. We can't do it because we can't compel speech, but your bosses can. And so that's what we want to do. Is we want to create laws where, it's okay for you to fire somebody for not, taking an oath, or, not believing in diversity, inclusion, and equity. It's okay for you to discriminate against those people. Then it just expands from there. The COVID vaccine is just an expansion of that. Saying that people have to do certain things is just an expansion of telling people what they must say and what they must do. It's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. All right, man. Thank you guys for listening. and I'll talk to you guys later.
Yeah.